Now I was texting with a GM earlier this week, a former GM, and I was asking about top 30 visits, and he said, pay attention to the positions more than the names. Devontae even said I could use some veteran mentorship. You want Devontae being mentored, not being the mentee of.
John McMullen and Jody McDonald here with you on Birds 365. We're lucky enough to get one of our favorite guests up on this Thursday edition. Philly guy who's kind of relocated to South Florida, but damn if he doesn't show up at the Eagles all the time. Anyway, get on that plane, come back here and do some Eagle stuff. Our buddy Rob Maaddi, who, as I say, is a Florida guy. So I'm going to start there with you, Rob, because I know you're only a hop, skip, and a jump from the Bucs, so you got a good feel on them. I threw this question by a couple of NFL guys that I've had either here with us on Birds 365 or on my national CBS show. 0 to 100%. 0 meaning, what are you even talking about, Jody? 100% being, oh, yeah, I'm damn sure. What percentage did Tom Brady have in Bruce Arians becoming the ex-head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Jody, I'll say 100%, but not from the perspective or the angle that most are thinking or feeling. But Bruce Arians himself said, right? He said the fact that Brady was coming back allowed him to move on and feel that he's turning the team over in a position where Todd Bowles can win a Super Bowl. So from that respect, yes, Tom Brady.
All right, you're spinning it on me. No, I wanted did Brady go in and tell Leona,
well, let me
get the old man out, or I'm not coming back.
All right,
go ahead, John.
Let me go in this direction with you, Rob, because I'm not a conspiracy theorist guy, but there's this story going around the NFL that the two Michigan men, Stephen Ross and Tom Brady, had this backdoor plan of faux retirement, and he's going to buy part of the Miami Dolphins. There's a lot of moving parts to this conspiracy. And they were going to backdoor it that way. Tom was going to play in Miami. And one of the reasons Tom was going to go to Miami is because things weren't, great with Bruce. What is your take on the whole conspiracy? That this was the original plan from Tom Brady when he decided to say, I'm going to walk away?
I don't dismiss it entirely. I feel like the reporting there has been done. Ben Volan's one of those reporters who obviously is very well connected, has a history with Brady and his people in New England, and Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk has done a lot of reporting on this. So I don't think that's something that should be dismissed. I feel like there were some inklings, there were some signs towards the end of last year that maybe things weren't exactly as cool as people may have wanted it to be. After the final game, when they lost to the Rams in the playoffs, Levante David, I believe it was either Levante David or Devin White, one of the linebackers, I forget which one, alluded to some issues within the locker room. But when pressed on it the following day, he kind of downplayed it because his comments were taken as, what was going on there? Was it Brady and the Arians? What was happening? Now, some also interpreted that as, what was the whole Antonio Brown situation? That was an issue within the locker room. Maybe some players did not feel that was handled the way it should have been handled. It could have been handled better. Maybe if it was a different coach who wasn't as fiery, who wasn't in the way Bruce Arians decided to kick him off. Maybe that was part of it. I don't know that Tom necessarily, although he never said anything negative about it, I don't think he could not have been happy with that situation for sure. So there's the conspiracy theory is one that I think there may be something to it. Now, Brady's under contract this year with the Buccaneers. Tua Tagovailoa is the quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. There would have had to have been a trade. He couldn't have just walked away unretired and come back to Miami. So there's a lot of pieces and elements to this. And the Bucks had made it clear. Arians had said, we're not giving him away. We're not trading him. It's just bad business. So there's a lot to it that I don't know how it could have been pulled off. Could it happen for next year where he's playing at age 46? Yeah, if he doesn't restructure and get a contract and he's one and done and he's ready, wants to come back, potentially. But what if Tua develops with all the weapons that he has? What if he actually develops into? And we saw towards the end of last year where he may not have been a elite type Pro Bowl quarterback, but towards the end of last year, he put together some solid starts and some excellent games. I think he had consecutive games of 80% plus completions, and that was a step in the right direction. So there's a lot that has to go down. Do I think that Tom Brady could end up in an ownership position in Miami at some point? Yes, I think that could happen.
Yeah, well, then I was going to say I disagree with Florio. Now I disagree with Maaddi. He might not get the chance to get ownership in Miami because Stephen Ross might not be owning unless Stephen Ross he's doing the partial ownership thing with somebody else other than the guy who's in place right now. And the whole Florio thing, he gets no credit for Brady because he basically had him in a San Francisco 49er uniform. That didn't happen. Sorry, Mike. But we're up on a Brady tangent. Let me suck you back into the Eagles here, Mr. Maaddi. I just asked this question of Marcus Hayes, and Marcus is there every day. You're there often enough to have an opinion on this. Year 2, Nick Sirianni comes in and as an understood head coach, wasn't a hot commodity. They give him the job. He has the year that he has, gets the Eagles into the playoffs. He has his way of doing things a little different than any Eagle coach who came before him. How solidified is he in that locker room? Is he the man? Do they just accept what he says and his motivation factors because of the first season he had? Is he still in a growing mode? Pardon my roots attempt at humor here. But where does he sit right now as the guy in charge, year 2, head coach, Philadelphia Eagles?
I think pretty solid ground because he came in as rookie head coach and led this team to the playoffs despite some rough patches. And although they beat a whole bunch of teams that had losing records, they didn't beat any teams with winning records, and they got disposed of by Brady and the Bucks in the playoffs. That's quite an accomplishment for a first-year head coach in a rebuilding program coming off a 4-11-1 season. I think they're a relatively young team. We know that. They're a young team with a lot of guys who don't have much experience with other head coaches. So Nick Sirianni is their guy. He's the one who led them to out of the basement that they were in and into the postseason. And I think he's a guy that players can relate to. He's a player-friendly coach, and he's someone who, although he's not a strict, tough disciplinarian, not of the Parcells, Belichick, Tom Coughlin mode, I think guys really they respect him, and he's someone who is, although still growing, can command that locker room. So I think he's on pretty solid ground going into year 2, and they're in a position now where they got to continue to figure out how to get better in a conference, and that although there's a lot of players we saw how the AFC West got better, we saw other teams get better. The Eagles haven't done much this offseason. They got to figure out how they can be a contender when other teams have gotten better and they've kind of been like, sitting right there.
Well, one of the ways they're going to get better is the draft, obviously, Rob. And we're in top 30 visit season, and Chris Olave, the latest reported visit to the Eagles. Now, I was texting with a GM earlier this week, a former GM, and I was asking about top 30 visits, and he said, pay attention to the positions more than the names because it indicates you're kind of targeting. Well, the Eagles have brought in Olave, Jamison Williams was yesterday, George Pickens from Georgia, more of a second-round pick, but still was in earlier in the week. It's a clear indication. annual tradition now here in Philadelphia. Eagles are going receiver near the top of the draft. How surprised were you when talking to people around the league, the explosion of the wide receiver salary market? Did that take people by surprise? Because it seems like it took the Eagles by surprise.
Yeah, I think so. And I had talked to a lot of agents who represent some of the better tight ends and last year and a little bit into this year. And everyone's waiting for tight ends to get paid the way wide receivers get paid, specifically when Amari Cooper got that contract and obviously the Cowboys traded him. There was some thought like, hey, this guy's already overpaid. And now they're getting even bigger and blowing away Amari Cooper's contract. And I'm waiting for tight ends to catch up because they have such a dual role and are as important, sometimes even more important to an offense when you're talking about guys like Kelsey and Kittle, and to some degree when Ertz was having career type numbers and awesome years. So there's been, I think, a lot of people surprised by what's happening with what the wide receivers getting all this ridiculous amount of money. And now we saw that with some of the quarterbacks. They're getting, Patrick Mahomes got insane dollars. Aaron Rodgers getting a ton of money, and all of a sudden they can't afford Devontae Adams. So if you're going to invest that much into your wide receivers and into your quarterbacks, and I know it's not going to be as many wide receivers who get that kind of money as quarterbacks who get that kind of money, because there just aren't that many. The QB position is what it is. You got to pay the guy who's going to be behind center. But it's going to put teams in a difficult position with the salary cap. If you start throwing all of the Tyreek Hill type money, Devontae Adams type money, whatever Deebo Samuel's going to end up getting, that's going to be potentially he may deserve more than anyone because of the way his versatility and how he plays. Like, as the Eagles are looking at and thinking about wide receiver, I'd love to see them bring in a guy like Treylon Burks who could be that Deebo Samuel type player, who's a versatile guy who you can hand the ball to. I think he's going to get really paid, and that's going to be, and I don't know if it's going to be in San Francisco. So that's going to be the next one for sure.
All right, I'm going to beat John to the punch. Yeah, except we don't know if the Eagles can use a Treylon Burks type guy because their bubble screen work with Jalen Reagor hasn't really worked too well to this point. But off on a side note, here's where I want to go with you, Maaddi. We're 2 weeks from day one or night one of the NFL draft, I should say. Will you be in Vegas? And if you are, God bless. Isn't it the greatest thing to get paid to go to Las Vegas, to do work and be in Las Vegas? But if not, if you're going to be home and just watching it, maybe you're going over the Bucks to talk to those in charge there. If you were going to be home, do you watch ESPN? Do you watch the NFL Network? Do you watch ABC for the personality features? Where is Rob Maaddi spending his draft time this year?
It's still to be determined whether I'm in Vegas, Tampa, or Philly. So I got three options. I got to pick one right now. I think Vegas looks a little bit more intriguing than Philly. Tampa is home, so it's easy to sleep in my own bed after covering a draft. But either way, it's going to be on when we're in the media room or wherever it is. I go NFL Network. I'm just a NFL Network guy, and I'll probably go. I will go that route. I don't even know what's happening on ABC, personality features and all that.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Hopefully.
Well, I'm a big DJ guy. So before that, I was a Mike Mayock guy. So I'm with you. I'm an NFL Network guy. But yeah, I mean, if I were you, I would never leave Tampa. So if that helps.
Yeah, it'd be an easier decision. So I'm coming right up on it now. We're 2 weeks away, so I got to make my plans within a day or so. That's for sure.
And everybody's got to make their plans for draft day. More importantly, the teams themselves. So we look at the Eagles now. We started at 3. They make the trade with New Orleans. They're down to 2. You know, it's interesting. We talked a little bit, Rob, about the exploding wide receiver numbers, and you brought up the quarterbacks. Derek Carr being the latest at $40 million plus. Now, and Andrew Brandt, our buddy, was on saying that was a bad contract considering what Deshaun Watson went. They should have held that for more. I bring this up for this reason, Rob. And Jody knows I've been asking a lot of people this, and you can offer a better perspective than most. Jalen Hurts was a second round pick in 2020, so he's eligible for an extension after this upcoming season. Now, if he plays like he did this year, Pro Bowl alternate, makes the team, takes the team to the playoffs, what's that worth? In this market, if the Eagles get that at $30 million a year, that would be a bargain, wouldn't
it? If they were, see, that's the big question, because they're positioning themselves right now with that trade and the 2 1s for next year, and the potential that if they wanted to go in a different direction, and I don't know, and clearly they're not convinced on Jalen Hurts yet, and that's understandable, because he's shown enough to leave you wanting to see more, to where you're intrigued, to where you think that this guy's obviously talented. He's got abilities and skills, but he's got areas where he needs to grow and needs to develop and needs to become a guy. I think it's pretty simplistic when we say in these terms, and I hear more and more people using these terms, and I've been using it since the middle of last season at some point. Is he a guy you win because of, or is he a guy you win with? And he's been a guy you win with, and he's got to develop into someone they win because of. So if that doesn't happen this year, he could put up nice numbers. He could make a Pro Bowl, and they could still feel at the end of the year that, you know what, we haven't seen enough from him to where we feel he could be a quarterback that's going to win us a Super Bowl, and they go in a different direction. So I think you could see there are guys who put up good numbers worthy of nice contracts. Kirk Cousins, for one, right? But he hasn't won a thing. Carson Wentz, 27-7 last year. When you look on the surface and you look on those numbers, 27-7, pretty good numbers in even today's NFL. And he gets traded. So there's going to be a lot of outside the numbers trying to look at the development, the growth, how he can handle the offense, how he handles reading the defenses, how he can be a guy who can lead you to deep into the postseason. I think there's a lot of questions still left to be answered about Jalen, and I'm excited to see what he can do and how much he's grown, because you would hope from year 1 to year 2 we saw the growth, year 2 to year 3. There's still a lot of room for Jalen Hurts to improve. If he gets there, though, John, if he does get there, 30 is not a crazy number to think of what he would be worth, a $30 million a year quarterback, which coming out of the draft is a second-round pick who is supposed to be a Taysom Hill. That's pretty good.
I just got a text. It was funny. I got one earlier in the show from Pete Carroll who said, tell Marcus Hayes, don't wait for his Christmas card. I just got one here. Says same exact thing. Don't wait for the Christmas card for Rob Maaddi and John McMullen from Mel Kiper, as a matter of fact. Don't be waiting by the mailbox for that Christmas card this year.
Great hair, Mel.
All right. Are you ready, Rob Maaddi, for the return of Derek Barnett and playing 50% of the snaps for the Philadelphia Eagles this year? Because if they're going to use a wide receiver position at number 15, they're bringing them all in. And they haven't brought in a bunch of at least first-round level talent guys at the defensive end position. That's where most of us thought would be the number one. The Eagles have options, but defensive end would be the spot where they try and address. If the 5 best are off the board and they don't think they can do the medical, wait on a Jabo thing, they wait till the second round. The guy's off the board, they got to wait till the third round. Are you ready for Derek Barnett taking 50% of the snaps again this year?
It's always him, Jody. It's always DB, right? I'm ready for Derek Barnett. I think that he, as a rotational piece, the value that they were able to bring him in at, I don't hate the move. I think he gives you a little bit more depth, and if it allows them to go in a different direction early in the first round and bring in a wide receiver and add more weapons for Jalen Hurts. I think that's actually beneficial because I want to get an answer on Jalen, and I want to see him surrounded by as much talent as possible to help develop him and get that answer. So if that's at the expense of having to watch Derek Barnett jump off sides and commit a late penalty at some point, probably at a critical juncture of a game early in the season, whatever it may be. And we're going to always turn and look at Nick Sirianni and see how he responds and reacts. And now that he knows, he's going to say something positive because that's how Nick is, and he knows his audience. So I'm fine with Derek Barnett.
Yeah, the Eagles are going to spin it like this, Rob, and the fact that, well, defense can help the offense, and they brought in Hassan Reddick and Kaiser White, and they're going to get, in theory, better on the defensive side of the ball. And that's going to help Jalen Hurts with field position. But when we all heard that you got to build up around Jalen Hurts, we were thinking it's more than Zach Pascal, right? Now they're going to get a wide receiver pretty high in the draft. They're going to get a running back, I think, probably day 3, and there'll be some good ones because of the devaluation of that position. But you're right. I mean, how do you evaluate a kid when you have a second-year receiver in Devontae Smith, a third-year receiver in Quez Watkins, who are very young and still developing themselves? And the Eagles, by their actions, said, well, we went after Calvin Ridley. It didn't work out. Tried to sign Christian Kirk. They got outpriced in the market. Allen Robinson, they got beat by the Super Bowl champions. Robert Woods didn't want to come here. They wanted a veteran receiver, but now they have to shift towards another younger receiver. Devontae even said, I could use some veteran mentorship. You want Devontae being mentored, not being the mentee of, a new receiver. How does this help Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, and it's certainly Greg Ward isn't that guy who's going to be able to, although help guys in different ways. He hasn't had that success on the field to be the veteran mentor who's been there and accomplished that. He's a guy who's been able to hang on to the roster for many years, and he's the veteran, and now Zach Pascal. I know a lot of people are giving up on Jalen Reagor. As long as he's still on the roster, and that may be something that changes, he could be part of a trade on draft day or whatever it may be. I feel maybe there's a way to, I talked about Treylon Burks as being a guy that you want to, I like to look at because maybe he could be in a Deebo Samuel type. I know they tried a little bit of it with Jalen Reagor, the bubble screens and things like that didn't work. Maybe just pitch the damn ball to Jalen Reagor. Maybe just stick him in the backfield and hand the ball to Jalen Reagor. He's shown that he can be elusive and somewhat of a weapon with the ball in his hands. If he can't get open or can't catch it, literally hand the ball to him. He was a first-round pick. Try and get something out. Hey, they need running back depth. Let's convert without converting Jalen Reagor and saying you're go hang out in the running backs room and watch film with them. Make him into the Deebo Samuel type just to give them some usage out of this guy. And yeah, they're still going to end up bringing in a wide receiver early, but that isn't a veteran guy, like you said. It's not the Calvin Ridley, and it's not anyone, the Allen Robinsons, or anyone who's going to be able to be a mentor for Devontae Smith. And I think that is important. Now, in this NFL and the way guys are now, people they're hanging out with players on other teams. They're spending their offseason working out together. I think Devontae Smith can get that mentorship and the advice that he needs from wide receivers not on the Eagles, from guys he looks up to around the league. I think that's available to him. I talked to a lot of players who the NFL just did a mentorship program actually a couple weeks ago, and some of the former players and some of the guys who are still in the league. I spoke to Kelvin Beachum about it. So there's that kind of program. He may not be getting it on a daily basis in the locker room, but he could get it outside. I would have loved to see them make it happen for him, and they didn't. Doesn't mean it won't. There's still the possibility that you can, like the way they've always brought in secondary help later in the summer, the July, the August, the Ronald Darby trade. There's still always a possibility somebody becomes available that's intriguing enough. But if they're going to go wide receiver early in the draft, that's going to decrease that possibility that they go the veteran route.
All right. The reason I'm not cutting some of the young Eagle wide receivers as much slack as it sounds like you guys are, not keeping Jamar Chase from doing what he's doing, not keeping Justin Jefferson from doing what he's doing, or CD Lamb from doing what he's doing. So we've got other receivers around the league who are putting up much gaudier numbers than the Eagles' young receivers. Keep up with the Joneses there, boys. All right, Rob, last thing, because I know you're a football wonk just like John and myself. Following the draft, you start checking mocks mid-season as to who are the top-ranked guys, and we're following it all the way right up until now, which is 2 weeks before the draft. There's no consensus on anybody, including from the number one pick on down. Any mock you go to, it could be any one of 3 or 4 guys who are the number one pick, and then that affects number 2 and 5 and 6 and so on and so forth down the line. It seems like there are varying opinions this year on these players, and we know where the Eagles sit, and they're not going to get a top 14 player. They're going to get 15 and 19 as of right now. Why do you think that is? Is it just one of those years? Is there misinformation floating out there? The teams are desperately trying to cover up and keep away from other teams information on what they're doing. It seems to me, and I've been doing this junk for a long time, less agreement on the level of players in this year's draft, and I'm talking about basically the first round, than any year before that. Why do you think that is? Do you even agree with my statement?
No, yeah, I do, because I've seen such a wide consensus of there isn't a consensus, right?
Right.
There's a wide ranging. Even when you look at the quarterbacks, is Kenny Pickett going to be a top 10 guy? Is he going to be a top 15 to 20? Where's he going to be? Who's going to be the top quarterback taken? Who's going to be the top player taken? I think maybe the pandemic played a little bit in this because of the role, the way teams were not able to practice, the way some players did not play, and how 2020 just upended everything, right? That may play a little bit of a role in it. I think there's got to be also somewhat of gamesmanship where the more information is misinformation, I feel. When you're getting a ton of information, I think that's often teams trying to lead other people to think that they may be interested or they may want somebody. So when you keep things closer to the vest, and I've always thought that's the best way to do it, but the more you hear and the more that's talked about, I think a lot of info turns into misinfo. And then people are just trying to keep what they want to do, who they really like, closer to the vest. And there's going to be I think there's going to be still, even though the Eagles and the Saints upended the first round with that blockbuster of a deal, I think there's going to be a lot of wheeling and dealing this year. I think this is a draft where teams may look to move down because there isn't you look at a team like the Carolina Panthers, who are in need of a quarterback, and with a 6th pick in the draft, they could pretty much probably have anybody they want. Maybe Malik Willis is off the board. I don't know yet who's off the board, or they could have anyone, but they don't have a 2nd or 3rd round pick, and they have a lot of flaws. Maybe they move down and still get their quarterback. So I think there's going to be a lot of wheeling and dealing in this draft, maybe more so than we've seen in years past.
Most important question for last, as always, Rob. Before that, at Rob Maaddi, you see it there. Follow him on Twitter, the AP Pro Football Podcast. You got faithonthefieldshow.com. You can follow Rob there. So you got T.O. on the podcast. Did you get any driveway workout tips? I know he's 40. He's got to be 48, 49.
Yeah,
is he 50?
He's 48.
Yeah. Fan-controlled football. He's trying to get back on the field. How's T.O. doing?
T.O. still, man, he's fun. He's one of the more entertaining guys to to talk to. And I thought it was crazy. He's sitting there. He's like, yeah, I spoke to an AFC team. The owner called me last year, told me to stay in shape. I spoke to the GM and I spoke to the coach last year at age 47. And I'm thinking to myself, like, come on, T.O. Like, and then he later says it to someone else in a different interview. He said that he was blowing up Andy Reid's phone, trying to get on the field with them. It wouldn't shock me if T.O. could go out there and as great a shape as he's in, man, he's a freak of nature. If Tom Brady's doing it at age 45, I think T.O. could still run out there and catch 50 balls for 1,000 yards at age 48. He's an incredible physical specimen, and he's just a fun dude to be around. I always thought he was misunderstood, guys. For all of the craziness of T.O., he's never been in trouble. He's never been in any legal trouble that we know of, and he's always kept himself, on that side of the law. And I think, he always brings that up too. He always going to tell you, hey, they said this, that, and that about me. I never got arrested. I never did this. Well, no, kudos to you. You shouldn't be. I hope nobody
That's a low bar, but yeah, kudos.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not a felon. Yeah, way to go, T.O. All right. More importantly, Robbie, and we got to wrap this up. Speaking of freak of nature, what are you curling these days?
No, man. So at one point, I was in the worst shape of my life about 3 weeks ago. I was like, I got to get back in there. I got to do some things. Whole 30 diet just dropped 9 pounds. I could see 2 of the 6 packs. I see 2 of them. I don't think I'll ever get the other 4. I don't think I can ever get there. I like my sweets, but I'm getting there. I got a little shoulder thing situation, little rotator cuff injury. So the most I ever benched was 365, but I'm nowhere near that anymore. Nowhere near it.
I'm doing.
That's pretty good.
12.
I got 225 up once when I was like 21 years old. Right.
The only thing I'm even trying these days are 12-ounce curls.
Okay.
And I'll be doing more of them because the girls are away this weekend. So I'm planning on doing a lot of 12-ounce curls here at Shea McDonald. Maaddi, man, always a pleasure, bud. Your tan's looking good. You're looking pretty cut. Always good to catch up with you, buddy, and we'll do it again after the draft. If you get to Vegas, play red. When in doubt, play red. All right?
You got it. I'll play for you. Thank you, fellas. Have a great week.
Rob Maaddi, Associated Press, here with us on Birds 365. Yeah, nothing better than getting paid to go to Vegas. I hope Rob weasels his way into that assignment. All right, we got an assignment left. Mac and Mac coming back to put a bow on the show.